The prairie didn't move. Asterisk, not a bird, not a whisper. Not even the sun dared touch the dry soil that morning. Like it too, knew something wasn't right. Asterisk, a girl stood alone near the eastern gate of Brackenridge Ranch, her bare feet sunk ankle-deep into chalky dirt. Her hair was the color of coal after rain, thick with wind knots, braided in places like memory had stopped and started in her hands. She had no bag, no coat, no horse. Just a blanket slung over one shoulder and a carved stick in her hand. Smooth? Old. Blackened at the base like it had once tasted fire. She wasn't asking, she wasn't begging, asterisk, she just knelt and started. Drawing in the dirt, strange symbols with slow, deliberate motion, and she whispered as she did, her lips barely moving, asterisk from the ridge above. 3 men on horseback spotted her and began laughing. One nudged the others, asterisk. There's our morning omen. He smirked, wiping sweat from his brow, despite the early hour. Which or just plain touched, you think? Asterisk behind them, the rancher arrived. His horse kicked up a dry trail of dust as he descended, a tall man, wiry, dressed in worn leather with a duster coat, too nice for the rest of him. His mouth was thin. His eyes, thinner, he dismounted slow, walking until his boots stopped the breath from her makeshift markings. She didn't flinch. Just kept drawing, asterisk, you deaf? He asked, asterisk. She traced one last curved line, then looked up at him, eyes dark as broken glass. She said nothing, asterisk. He looked down at the drawing. He couldn't read it, but something about it stirred something, cold and small in his chest. Something old, asterisk. His boot swept across the dirt, erasing her work in one angry smear. Asterisk, you don't belong here. He said, still, no answer. She only stood, turned, and walked across the dead field toward the line. Where the horizon broke into stone and thornbush, asterisk, one of the men laughed behind him. Maybe she cursed you. Asterisk, she's got nothin' but mud, the rancher muttered, spitting into the earth. Let her be hungry elsewhere. The girl didn't look back. Night fell with no color. The prairie groaned beneath itself. Brittle and cracked, horses refused water. A dust devil danced past the barn and vanished into the hills. The cattle lowed restlessly, pressing near the western fence as if something unseen pressed back. Asterisk inside the main house. The rancher drank by lamplight, watching shadows crawl up the wall like old regrets. His foreman had left after sundown with a trail of men claiming a rustler had been spotted near the southern flats. The rancher didn't believe it. It was just a way to ride, to make noise. To keep from thinking, asterisk, he opened the drawer in the old cabinet. Inside, his wife's comb, ivory, dust-covered. She'd been gone a year next week. Asterisk, outside. Something moaned, a wind or maybe a voice caught in the fence wire. The cattle stirred. A calf cried once, then went quiet. Asterisk, the rancher stood, walked to the window. Nothing moved. Asterisk, by morning, the sky had changed. Asterisk, it was pale. Washed out, bruised yellow at the edges like a fever had taken it. The rancher heard it before he saw it. The sound of men shouting. Boots running across the front porch, spurs clattering. He threw the door open. What in God's name? Asterisk, the herd, a ranch hand cried, out of breath. Blessure. Whole herd. They rode out fast. The dust cloud ahead wasn't wild. It was centered. Dense, rolling in low waves like a living thing. The cattle were all there, but not in the fields. Not near the feeding line, asterisk. They stood in a circle, a perfect one, in the far field, where the girl had knelt, asterisk, dozens of heads bowed. Not a single cow stepped inside the ring she had drawn. The dirt there was smooth now, but untouched, like they knew not to go near it. Asterisk, the rancher's mouth opened. But nothing came. Asterisk, he stepped off his horse. Walked to the edge of the circle. The wind changed. It carried the scent of sage, smoke, and something like lilac from long ago, a smell he hadn't known since before the war. Asterisk, he knelt, touched the soil, still warm. Asterisk, the next day she returned. Asterisk, no sound. Just there, standing by the well, her blanket damp from river mist. In her hand that same carved stick. But now it was wrapped in red cloth, bound at one end with what looked like horsehair. Asterisk, she didn't knock. She didn't ask, she simply stood. The rancher came out slow, rifle in hand, but lowered it when she didn't move. Asterisk, I don't know what game you're playing, he said low. But this ain't land for spirits or ghost stories. Asterisk, she tilted her head, not mocking, more listening. He stepped closer. What did you do? No answer, just silence. And something in her eyes that reminded him of the way the land used to look before fences went up. Wild, endless. Asterisk, he took one more step. Asterisk, she extended the stick toward him. Not as a weapon. An offering. He didn't take it. You think you can make this right? He snapped. You think you can draw some circles in the dirt and suddenly the world bends for you? Still, no words. She looked toward the ridge, where the herd grazed now in tight patterns, always avoiding that same spot. He grabbed the stick. The second his hand touched it, something flickered. Asterisk, not a vision. Not quite. But his knees buckled. Just for a second. And he saw his wife's eyes, not how she died, but how she looked when she begged him to stop burning what didn't belong to him. Asterisk, his grip loosened. The stick dropped to the ground. The girl stepped back, turned, and vanished. Into the hills again. That night he dreamed of fire. Asterisk, not wildfire. Not war, just one small flame. And a girl singing, but in a language he didn't understand. Asterisk, and his wife, standing at the edge of it, looking right at him. Asterisk, you forgot her, she whispered. But she remembered you. Asterisk, he woke with a torn throat and wet cheeks. 3 days passed. Asterisk, the cattle began grazing in tight patterns. Asterisk, they wouldn't drink from the old trough, only the well she stood near. Asterisk, the hands noticed, murmured behind doors. One left without a word. Another asked if they should hire a preacher. The rancher said nothing. He kept the carved stick hidden now, wrapped in canvas behind the whiskey shelf. Every night he unwrapped it, held it, waited, but she didn't come back. The wind returned. On the 7th day, it brought with it a different smell, wood smoke, ash. The rancher followed it past the last fence, up toward the ridge. The earth darkened with every step, charred brush, scorched rocks. Signs of an old fire, not recent, but not old enough to be forgotten. Asterisk, and at the top, a tree, burned, dead, and under it, something tied in red thread, fluttering. He approached. Slow, asterisk, a child's doll, woven of straw, eyes painted in black soot. And beside it, a small wooden plaque, half buried. He dug it out, carved into its surface. Faded but clear, asterisk, for those who were taken, for those who remember. He fell to his knees because he did remember now, the raid, the fire, asterisk, the little girl who ran into the hills while men with torches laughed and looted. Asterisk, he never told his wife. Never told anyone. Asterisk, he was young, angry, trying to win land, not knowing what it cost. Now he did. A sound behind him. The girl, asterisk, she stood near the burned tree, eyes shining in the wind. He couldn't speak. She didn't need him to. Asterisk, she knelt beside the doll, pressed her fingers into the soil, whispered something he couldn't hear. Asterisk then stood and walked past him toward the ranch below. Asterisk. He stayed kneeling long after the sun fell, long after his knees bled against the sharp rock, long after the wind stopped moving. A pale fog rolled down the hills that morning like breath from a god. Asterisk, it wasn't the kind that burned off with sun. It stayed low, cold, heavy with the scent of pine, ash, and something older. Something that hadn't been named in English. Asterisk, the rancher watched from the porch, coat draped over one shoulder, coffee untouched in his hand. The cattle stood still again, tighter now than before, hooves pressed into one another, circling that same spot in the earth where the girl had once drawn. No fence held them, no order given. And yet not one step beyond that invisible line. Asterisk, the ranch hands didn't speak anymore. Not when they passed him, not when they led the horses down the southern path. A silence had taken hold, not forced but natural. Like the land itself had dropped a hush over them. Asterisk, he hadn't seen the girl in 3 days. Not since she'd knelt at the burned tree, but the carved stick she'd once held now sat on his mantle, wrapped in red thread. By noon, the fog hadn't lifted. Instead, it thickened, swallowing the lower hills. The cattle stirred, uneasy. A coyote barked once from somewhere near the ridge, and then all went still again. That's when he saw it. A shape moving through the gray. Not the girl, taller. Older. An old man stepped from the fog with bare feet and a weathered cloak. Long, white hair tied in a knot behind his neck. A necklace of bones around his collar, clinking softly with every step. The rancher didn't raise his gun. The man didn't speak. He just nodded once, and walked past, toward the old shack behind. The barn, the one nobody used. The rancher followed. Inside the shack, the air smelled of tobacco and cedar. The man sat by the cold hearth, lit a fire with nothing but a whisper and a match, and then finally looked up. You saw her. The old man said. The rancher gave the smallest nod. She didn't come for revenge, the man said. She came because this place still remembers, even when the people don't. The rancher sat across from him, slowly. She's not like other children, the old man continued. She never was. Who is she? The rancher finally asked. The man looked at the flame, not at him. A memory that didn't die. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small pouch, placing it between them. Ash, red dust, and something brittle, perhaps root, perhaps bone. He opened the pouch and threw a pinch into the fire. Smoke bloomed. The rancher's eyes blurred, and in that moment, time shifted. He saw a child in the river, not drowning, standing. Still, watching a house burn across the hill, watching men cheer. Watching a woman, her mother, run into the smoke and never return. The child did not cry. She only held something small in her hands, a stick, carved, wrapped in red thread, and she whispered to the earth. When he blinked again. The old man was gone. Only the fire remained, and the pouch and the smoke, which still curled upward like a hand reaching for heaven. That night, the rancher sat alone on his porch, watching clouds gather above the hills. He didn't drink, didn't light the lantern. Didn't speak. Lightning flashed in the far distance. The cattle brayed low. The air thickened. He rose, walked toward the barn, and opened the drawer beneath his wife's comb. There, beneath the ribbon she used to wear on Sundays, he found the letter. He'd forgotten about it, or maybe he'd buried it. The envelope had yellowed. His name written in her old hand. Inside, one page. Smudged ink. A faint trace of lavender on the paper. If something ever happens to me, and you're still holding that pain inside you. I want you to look for her. The girl I told you about. The one near the river? The one with the eyes that see things no child should see. You told me once that people like her don't belong here. But I think maybe it's people like her who keep this place from turning to dust. Don't let this land forget. You remember for both of us. He read it twice, then held it to his chest and closed his eyes. The rain came just before dawn. Not a storm, just a cold, steady downpour. The kind that soaked through coats and bones alike. He walked the field in it, boots squelching, hat low. Near the edge of the cattle trail he saw movement. A tent made of bark and hide, barely tall. Enough for a child. Inside, the girl sat, dry somehow, legs crossed. Her eyes followed him without surprise. He knelt at the edge of her camp. Hat in hand, she didn't gesture for him to come closer. Still, he spoke. I saw the fire, he said. The one I started, years ago. No answer. I remember what I know what I let burn, and I think she never stopped watching me. He paused, then reached into his coat. From it, he pulled his wife's ribbon, and the letter. He placed them beside her in the dirt, near a small stone circle where herbs burned, then stood. She reached forward slowly, touched the ribbon. Then pulled the ashes from the fire beside her and smeared a line across her forehead. He did not understand it, but it didn't matter. Later that week, A ranch hand came into the house and said the fence along the eastern ridge had been taken. Down, not broken, taken down, post by post, wire rolled neat. No cattle escaped. They simply grazed away from the opening. What do we do? The hand asked. The rancher looked out the window toward the hills. Nothing, he said. The silence grew thicker with each passing day. Not fear? Not guilt? Something more solemn. One evening, 2 men rode in from town. Men the rancher had known during his younger, crueler years. They'd fought beside him, drunk with power and land grabs. They laughed at the quiet, at the cattle's strange grazing patterns, at the symbols drawn into barn doors. You letting some witch child run your land now? One said, maybe we should smoke her out for you. He said nothing. The taller of the two reached for his revolver and spat. You always were soft under all that talk. That was when the girl appeared from the tree line behind them. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She just walked. Forward, barefoot, her carved stick in hand. The cattle lifted their heads. One by one, the taller man took aim. The rancher stepped in front of the girl, eyes locked with his old war partner. You raise that gun again, the rancher said. And every beast in that field will come for you first. The man laughed. You've lost it. But he didn't fire, because something in the wind changed. It carried the weight of something ancient. Something with memory. And judgment. The cattle started to move forward slowly. As one, the men rode off without another word. The rancher didn't watch them go. He just turned to the girl and said, You're safe here. She didn't nod, but she sat near the well that night, and stayed till dawn. In the following days, the land shifted. Crows stopped circling the barn. The well water ran clearer. And wildflowers. Ones the rancher's wife had tried for years to grow, now bloomed near the gate. Right where the girl had first knelt. She never spoke, but sometimes she would hum. And when she did, the cattle would lay down in a circle around her. The rancher knew it wasn't over. The land didn't forget in a week. But something had begun, something real, and he no longer feared the smoke in the distance. Because now he knew. Sometimes smoke didn't mean ruin. Sometimes it meant the land was listening again. And sometimes, just sometimes, the wind carried, healing with the ash. The sky turned the color of steel. No sunrise, no color. Just wait. That morning, the cattle didn't stir. They huddled close to the earth as if it could protect them from what was coming. The girl sat among them, her blanket wrapped tight, the carved stick across her lap. Her eyes were open but far away, like she saw something no one else could. The rancher stood on the porch in silence. Something was changing in the land. He'd felt it in his bones before during the dry lightning. Storm the year his wife got sick. The silence before the wind came. The stillness that made birds leave their nests. Now, the same stillness stretched for miles. And down the trail. Dust rose, not from the weather, from riders. He saw them before the hands did. 6 men, weathered, armed, faces hidden beneath bandanas and hats. Their coats were too clean for honest work. Their boots too heavy for anything but force. Bounty men. Maybe ex-military. Maybe worse. They came fast. The girl didn't move. The rancher met them at the gate. The lead rider stepped forward, holding a folded paper, his glove still stained with wax from the seal. She's wanted, he said without a greeting. Something about trespass, interfering with livestock, resisting town orders. The rancher didn't flinch. There are no town orders out here. There are now, the man replied, cold. Land courts met in town. Someone filed a complaint. Old claims, native lineage. They say she's occupying ground that don't belong to her. The rancher took a step forward. And who do they say it does belong to? The man shrugged. Doesn't matter, they got a judge. Got the badge. Got a price on her head. He pulled the hammer back on his revolver, slow. Step aside. Behind the rancher, the girl stood now, silent, still barefoot. The wind picked up. Just slightly. Enough to make the tall grass sway. A bird called once, then nothing. The rancher stared at the 6 men. He looked tired, not from age, but from carrying something too long. He lowered his eyes for a beat, then spoke, soft. Asterisk, you ever hear what cattle do when they smell a storm? The bounty leader frowned. They don't run, the rancher said. They turn. They face it. He raised his voice now, not loud but sharp. I've buried a wife, burned bridges, lied to good people. But I won't let you take her, asterisk, the bounty man laughed. You think you and your cows can stop 6 men? A sudden growl cut the air. Not a dog, the sound came from the herd, low, gathering, asterisk, one of. The other bounty men shifted uneasily. Boss, but the girl stepped forward. She knelt in the dirt, asterisk, and with her fingers began drawing again, asterisk, slow, deliberate circles, lines, marks. The rancher couldn't read, but had come to respect, asterisk a. Second wind came, this time hotter, wild, full of dust and thunder, asterisk, then a single drop of rain, then many. The cattle moved, not wild, not scattered. They surrounded her, hundreds of hooves pressing the earth, creating a wall of flesh and heat and sound. Their eyes locked on the riders, asterisk, bounty men pulled their weapons. The lead rider fired into the air. Mistake. The thunder from the cattle was louder. One man tried to flee. His horse reared, spooked. Through him, another aimed his rifle. The rancher drew first. Asterisk, not to kill, but to protect. Asterisk, his shot struck the man's hand. The rifle fell. The rider screamed, cradling his wrist. Enough! The lead bounty man shouted, but even his horse was panicked now. The cattle closed in, not charging, asterisk, just there, immovable, breathing heavy, thick with warning. The girl rose, eyes locked on the leader, asterisk, she walked toward him, stick in hand. For a second he almost fired, asterisk, but something in her face stopped him. Not rage, not fear, asterisk, just memory, asterisk, like she'd seen the same man burn her world once before, and had already forgiven him. That was what undid him. The quiet the forgiveness. He turned his horse and fled. The others followed. Asterisk, the rancher stood in the settling dust. The cattle slowly calmed. The girl returned to the center of the field. Asterisk, she knelt. Pressed the stick into the earth one last time. A third wind came. Then silence. Later. The rancher stood at the burned tree again. Asterisk, the bark had cracked deeper with each season, but beneath it now grew a small flower, purple, wild, defiant. He knelt there, buried the bounty notice in the soil, asterisk, beside it. He placed his badge, the one he'd carried years ago as town sheriff before he'd quit. Asterisk, he didn't need it anymore. Weeks passed. The fences along the eastern edge never went up again. The land beyond it was left untouched, asterisk, and in the center of the field, where once cattle refused to tread, he built something simple, asterisk, a stone ring, no markings. Just earth and time and a place to remember. Asterisk, the girl still came and went. She never said a word, but she planted things now. Asterisk, strange herbs. Blue corn, wild grass, asterisk, sometimes he'd find feathers tied in the barn rafters, ribbons hanging from trees. He never took them down. Asterisk, one day, she brought a child. Barefoot, young, with the same quiet stare. The rancher didn't ask questions, he just brought out a stool, gave her the same comb his wife once used, asterisk, and left them to sit under the porch as the wind passed over. By winter, the land had changed, not just in shape, in spirit. Men from town still whispered about the strange ranch where cattle circled a girl in silence, where no rustler ever dared cross, where even lightning seemed to veer off course. But they never came again. And the rancher? He grew old in peace, scarred, yes, but not broken, not anymore, in the end. He died quietly, seated beneath the old burned tree. A letter in his coat pocket, written for no one but himself. It said only this: greater than some things we fence in. Asterisk, some things we must let grow wild. She was the latter, and because of her, this land breathes again. They buried him near his wife. And beside that, another stone, asterisk, to the girl who remembered. The girl didn't cry, she just knelt once more, pressed her fingers into the earth, and whispered, asterisk, and on the wind, carried westward like embers. The land listened and bloomed, asterisk.